The following is a production of the University of Hartford School of Communication.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the UHart Podcast Studios interview with President Lawrence Ward. We're recording this on Friday, March 14th, 2025, and this is his second interview with students. He previously interviewed with STN2, but this will be his first podcast interview, and let me just say, it was his idea, so we're very grateful for you to take the time to talk to us. I'm joined by Taylor. Taylor, tell us a little bit about yourself so that everyone and Dr. Ward knows a little bit about you.
Yes. So my name is Taylor DePaulo Daly. I am a junior here at the university studying digital media and journalism with a focus on sports production. I am currently interning at Yale University Athletics for the broadcasting team and have previously been an engineer for the 2024 Paris Olympics and have been helping revamp the UHart sports truck so we get it back up and running.
Right on. I love
Not
that.
bad, huh? I've been a professor at the university for 6 months. I'm an adjunct part-time faculty member. I'm also the president of the Four Cs Union here, and we're very glad to be working with you in a collaborative fashion. I must say that when I got to meet you in February, it was wonderful that you were so frank about all the things that are happening on the campus and beyond. So my first question is actually about beyond. I'd like to ask you what your thoughts are regarding the Department of Education as the federal government is now dismantling that institution, and how do you think it'll impact us here at UHart?
Yeah. We just want to jump right into it then.
Well, I would say that that's probably the biggest thing that's going on other than protests at campuses in the world, and let's just start with that.
Yeah. I was on a call earlier today talking with a couple members of the Board of Regents, and I think the overall feeling is there's a sense of exhaustion already with the new administration. Perhaps that's the goal. I think the work of the Department of Education is really important. I think less about the structure than I do about our students, about federal funding for financial aid. That really creates an opportunity for students to be on a college campus. I saw a headline where the federal financial aid website was down for several hours. That has a material negative impact on our students' ability. 98% of our students are on some form of aid to be at the University of Hartford. So the Department of Education unlocks opportunities. There are federal grants and funding for research and on the discovery of new ideas. All of that is important work. The department's Office of Civil Rights is incredibly important, particularly as we look at issues of gender bias and issues related to Title IX. So I think the work of the Department of Education is important. I also recognize there's probably any number of efficiencies that can be created. There's probably certainly some waste that needs to be identified, and so I'm all for that. But I don't know that that's achieved by dismantling the entire department.
And they've already gotten rid of, apparently, the Office of Civil Rights, or at least the people who work there. So that's an important issue. As a transgender woman, I know that the Department of Education has been, under the Biden administration, an ally, and now I'm afraid it's going to be my enemy. Let's talk a little bit about something that hasn't happened here on campus. I'm very proud that UHart has maintained peace while other campuses have been roiled by sit-in demonstrations and other protests. As we record this today, it's going to be Shabbat, and Jewish students on campus have had a peaceful demonstration. Are you worried at all about potential for a federal crackdown on demonstrations here at UHart, either for or against Israel or for or against Palestinians?
Am I worried about a federal crackdown on our campus? Not especially. I think what I think about, I don't know about worry, what I think about most is the opportunity that we have as a learned community to model what civil discourse and dialogue look like, right? And I think that's especially important when we disagree and when we don't see eye to eye. I think that a college campus, and in particular a college classroom, is designed for the fruitful exchange of ideas, especially when we disagree. So I think we have an opportunity on our campus to model what civil discourse looks like, to model what engagement looks like. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know that it has to take the course of protest as it can be engaged in civil dialogue.
That's excellent. And like I said, I'm proud of how the university, both from the administration to the student body, has handled the issues of the day in keeping the peace. Yeah. I feel like voices are represented and recognized and respected here at UHart, and that's important.
Yeah, I teach a course in crisis management in higher ed, and one of, I think, the key learnings when you think about crises that find themselves on a college campus is not waiting until a crisis to build relationships, right? And so I think it's important as the president for me to be in dialogue with our students, with our faculty, with our staff, and to have a pre-existing relationship prior to a crisis breaking out.
There you go.
And so many institutions and leaders in particular, are chasing the tail, right? And chasing, reacting to crisis as opposed to building the relationship proactively.
You and I have had a great little conversation, but let me have Taylor ask the next question since I've been dominating the conversation here.
Yes, so getting a little bit more onto on-campus life and students' opinions and hearing their voices' involvement in this. Just under 50% of students are worried about flooding on campus. I know we had an incident this year where students had to park in the back of the sports center because parts of parking lots were going to be flooded and parking outside of Conover. Is there any plan or motion in place for if a flood happens this upcoming spring or into next year when more cars might be on campus with a higher student population?
Is there a plan to address parking? Is there a plan to address flooding? I'm not sure I understand that.
A plan to address the flooding in the parking lots.
Yeah. Well, I will say one of the things that became very clear to me early on in my first year is how vulnerable our campus is. We've got a pretty dated physical plant. We've got issues with water. We have issues with HVAC. So our campus, I guess if I were to put it diplomatically, needs some love and attention. So the answer is yes, we do have mitigation plans for flooding. But more importantly, what I've asked for, and I have what I call a SWAT team, their official name is the Campus Renewal Action Group, working on how we deploy funds to invest in strengthening and improving deferred maintenance on this campus. That includes our buildings, our residence halls, our classrooms, and yes, our parking lots as well.
Thank you.
When you and I first met, it was at a board meeting, and we discussed a survey that was conducted by students in the university's Writing for the Media class, a public relations opportunity. And they did this survey last November, and I just published through UNotes the results of the survey. One of the questions was, do you think the university administration listens to you? And the 213 people who responded, 77% said no. And do you remember what you said to me when you suggested that the question might have been phrased better? Do you remember your?
I don't remember.
Remind me. You said, instead of asking, do you think the university administration listens to you, maybe you should ask, do you think the faculty listens to you? To drill down, to talk about not just the administration, but also the faculty, the teachers. And I'm wondering what, first of all, your response is in terms of an overwhelming response that students don't feel, at least 200 students don't feel as if the administration is listening. And how do you think me and other faculty members, how can we do better to listen to students?
Yeah, so I think I'll say a couple of things.
Sure.
I hate the word administration. So much so that I think in my first week, maybe on my first day, we had a sort of meet and greet, community meet and greet, right out here in front of GSU, and I looked across the way, and my office, right underneath my office, in big silver letters, is the word administration.
Yes.
And I remember remarking at that and said, I'm going to find a way to take that off of the building.
Wow.
And if you look across the quad, it no longer says administration.
I did notice that. I thought it fell off.
It might have fallen off. But it was not by accident. So what I mean by that is, if students feel as though their president isn't listening to them, then they should say that. And I have a responsibility to do whatever I can to be in dialogue with students, whether it's through STN, whether it's through student government, or directly, right? When I ask students to walk with their eyes up and their head up when I'm walking by, it's so that I can have a chance to be in dialogue.
Not in their phones, you mean?
Not on their phones or looking at their feet or listening to their music, all of which is cool, but you miss an opportunity to be in dialogue. So I think my point when you asked me that question about the administration, do students mean their president? Do they mean residents' life? Do they mean public safety? Do they mean faculty? Do they mean anyone who's employed by the university? The specificity allows me to dig in further and say, where can we do a better job? As opposed to just the administration writ large, right? So I like things that are actionable, and specificity allows me to affect action and to have an impact.
Let me ask Taylor to ask the next question. Can we ask one of the questions that you came up with?
Last fall, you
good
sat
one.
down
Okay.
with the Student Television Network and the Informer and reached out to both of them to get more involved in campus and answer any questions students may have.
Yeah.
And now you're sitting here today, reached out, and are here to answer more questions. So what do you think the importance is of reaching out and doing these interviews for students and campus life, as well as anyone who might be interested in the University of Hartford? Hear what you have to say.
I mean, I don't know any other way, right? So I really believe in engagement. I believe in authenticity. And I think the only way to do that is to be in dialogue with people. And whether there's a microphone in front of me or we're just sitting over there, right, as we're grabbing a meal or in the comments. So to be active, to be visible. I just think that sometimes your eyes and ears tell you a lot of what you need to know. And so the only way, I think the best way to lead, maybe not the only way, the best way to lead is to be listening. And so be careful of the leader who leads with his or her or their ears, with their mouth and not with their ears and not with their eyes. So I think it's critically important. It's been a signature part of how I've led, regardless of where I've been or the roles that I've had, is to lead by listening, by observation, and to be in dialogue with the communities where I serve. Leadership isn't about me. The presidency isn't about me. The university belongs to the students, belongs to the staff, belongs to the community, belongs to our alumni, and I'm a temporary steward. And so I just have a responsibility to be in dialogue, right? And that's whether or not we see eye to eye or whether or not we agree. But I'm always wanting to listen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's hope temporary is a long time. One more question about the survey.
Yeah.
The students were asked, what category of problem have you experienced if you're living on campus? And overwhelmingly, 70% said their washer and dryer. Some caught fire, some are unusable. After that, it was concerns about infestations with rodents, mold, and then the third biggest problem was electrical problems or windows and doors that don't function the way they should. Mm-hmm. Knowing that these are three big concerns for res life, what can you do to tell the students to help us on the way?
Yeah, so one of the first things I've prioritized is the quality of the physical condition of campus, leading with our residence halls. Students have I think a right and a responsibility and an expectation, maybe is the best way of saying it, of having, usable buildings, right? This is their home. And so we have a responsibility to address issues and concerns, and that's what we're in the process of doing. And I think it starts with our staff, but it also starts with making an investment in the quality of the residential experience. I come out of student and campus life, right, at my previous institution, and so I recognize the inherent importance of having a safe, secure, and a comfortable living environment, and we have a responsibility to invest in that.
Thank you. Taylor.
So the UHart student enrollment is up currently, and it's currently on a rise since we've kind of exited the larger stage of COVID-19.
Yeah.
Now, in the past, this has meant more money has gone towards clubs and organizations such as HEAT to be able to throw on the events they hold on campus, STN and WSAM to continue maintaining the radio station and TV studio. Now, do you expect this tradition will continue as we see a rise in student registration in the university, or do you think as of right now the money towards clubs and organizations will stay the same?
Or be cut.
Or be cut.
You do have a big deficit to deal with still.
Yeah, I think the way I think about it is around student engagement. And I think that we have a huge opportunity to invest more in the living learning experience within and beyond the classroom. So that's clubs and activities, and mostly because I think it contributes to a sense of belonging for students, to find the activity, the program, the group, the club, the organization. So I think that's an area actually for more investment, not less. And as enrollment grows, we actually need to invest more in that area, and not cut those areas. I don't believe that you can cut your way into financial stability, which doesn't mean that you don't. We're a resource constrained institution, and financial resources are in fact constrained. But I think the responsibility is, where are the right areas for investment? And when students feel connected to the university, and that's not in just a broad sense, it's usually through a specific way. Whatever your thing is, maybe it's student government, maybe it's a varsity sport, maybe it's your club, your activity, your sorority, your fraternity, whatever it is, those things are important measures of whether or not someone feels as though they belong at the University of Hartford, and that to me is well worth investing in.
Now, to go off a little bit about that, I know that the intramural sports at the University of Hartford has fully departed from being clubs on campus and have now become more affiliated with athletics, and it's athletics giving them their budgets and everything. And I know that some teams, such as women's ultimate frisbee, aren't going to be able to travel as much with the little budget that they've been given by athletics. Do you think moving forward, if this continues to be an issue for these intramural sports to be as involved and travel for their competitions, will there be a way to fix the issue?
Well, I think there's a couple of different categories in recreation sports. So there are club sports, and then I think that there are intramural sports. Club sports being engaged in competition against other universities and colleges. And I think we have to identify, and then intramural sports being essentially competing against other students on campus. I think both are important, but they have to be funded differently. My sense, and again, I don't really look at it at this level. I'm sort of like, how do we ensure that student engagement efforts, regardless of what they look like, have appropriate levels of funding? And when they don't, how do we increase that funding and not do it on the backs of our students? So one of the things I'm engaged in is in fundraising, right? And convincing more of our alumni and donor base to invest in the student experience. And so I come from previous institutions where we had to fundraise for a lot of that, to create a fund, for example, for recreation sports, for alumni who had a great experience here and have an interest in creating more opportunities for students. So that's the way ultimately in which we're going to increase the overall funding for student engagement activities, is to do a better job and a more focused and a more intentional job at getting donor engagement and fundraising, and I'll be leading that effort.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great follow-up. This is Women's History Month. Earlier this week, I participated in a panel about the importance of community for women.
I was there.
Thank you very much for attending. I'd like you to address the fact that I mentioned to you in our February meeting that students have told me they don't see themselves reflected in the faculty enough. They see themselves only when they buy something in GSU or Commons, or someone who takes care of the trash, or someone who is on the police force, but they don't see themselves in the faculty. And you mentioned about how you want to make this campus, in terms of its faculty, more diverse, more representative of people. And you held up your hands and said, I know firsthand what it's like to not be included. What can you do to reassure students that you're addressing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a responsibility as a leadership team and as an academic leadership team. I just had this conversation with our provost, Catherine Black, about current searches and ensuring that our faculty pools, our recruitment pools, are reflective of the diversity of our student body, and that's going to take some act from senior leadership and executive leadership and myself to say, I'm not satisfied with where we are. And we need to be more proactive. We need to be more expansive, and we've got to hold each other accountable for that. And that really does start with myself and with our provost and with our deans. And it continues to be an issue. And if I'm not advocating for that, then who will? I think that's what I told you.
You did.
In February.
Exactly right. We have a question from one of Taylor's classmates. Alex suggested this question. You want to ask that one?
So, Alex Easley is a current senior at the university in audio engineering, and his question was, once you become a graduate and become an alumni of the university, what's one way that you can continue to stay involved in the university and continue to stay connected with the campus?
Yeah. Great question, Alex. I'll say a couple of things. First and foremost is sharing the experience, hopefully a positive experience with others, helping to connect current students with an internship opportunity once you graduate and you're employed, to come back to represent your company or organization at a career fair. I think that's really important. Coming back to support events, October weekend, right? And staying connected. Ensuring that the university has updated contact information so that we can continue to be in touch, I think is an important responsibility of an alum. And then annual giving. Right? And it might be that in the first couple years, it's $10 or $15 annually. And then as students earn more and have an opportunity to invest more, to increase that. And so there is no such thing as a great but disconnected university, meaning great universities can never be disconnected from former students and from their alumni population. And that's a responsibility both of the university and of our graduates to say, I want to be connected. So I want to help with an internship. I want to help connect a current student with a job opportunity. I want to be a mentor. Or I just want to be on campus and be visible when I can. So all of those are ways, particularly for recent graduates, to stay connected to the university.
Thank you.
As an alumna, class of 24, I will tell you that you've convinced me. I will start donating.
Yes.
There are changes afoot. I've been hearing about the University Interdisciplinary Studies, where I teach a course, is evolving. Can you tell us anything about how the fall semester might look different from this semester in terms of the campus offerings?
Well, I don't know that fall will look materially different than this year, but I will say a couple of things. One, we have an effort led by our faculty to reimagine our general education program. One of the things that really stands out for me, given the schools and colleges that we have 7 schools and colleges, and it feels like such a siloed experience for too many of our students. So if you're a communications student, you probably don't take a class in education or health professions, or maybe not even in the business school, perhaps in arts and sciences. But maybe you don't take an art class or a music class. And I think that's a missed opportunity. I think one of the things is we try to prepare you, Taylor, and your classmates to add value to an increasingly complex and pluralistic world. It's going to take input from multiple disciplines, not just your own. You're going to be an extraordinary journalist. You're going to be an extraordinary digital creator, whether it's in the sports world or however you find yourself. And maybe you'll follow in Don's footsteps and be a great storyteller and journalist. But you're going to need to be able to appreciate multiple perspectives. And I think to the degree that we can have a much more interdisciplinary curricula writ large, the better prepared our students will be. And so I think it's not just in the general education program or in university interdisciplinary studies, but how do we combine majors across colleges, right? So that someone who's studying accounting has an appreciation for the arts, both the creative arts and physical arts. As someone who who's studying rad tech, right, also has an appreciation for communication, right? So all of these things for a pluralistic and complex world are really, really important. We have the bones at the University of Hartford to be able to do that. We just need to put it together in a way that's accessible across our schools and colleges for more of our students. It's a competitive advantage. It's the opportunity for a competitive advantage. But we just need to show greater intentionality around that.
And you think that'll probably make us more competitive?
I know it will make us more competitive.
In terms of students, because they have choices. So.
They have choices, absolutely. And students may not even want, listen, I've been in business schools for the last almost 25 years. And a lot of business students will come in and they'll say, these classes in arts and sciences aren't really all that important. They look at it as a gatekeeper as opposed to a gateway, right? Until you take a course, as I did as a business student at University of Connecticut, in anthropology and science fiction. Like, what?
Okay.
And I read Dune for the first time.
Same.
Right? And I was like, okay, well, how does this relate to business? But it was super, super cool, right? I took a sociology course and then wanted to take more sociology courses, right? And then I find myself being naturally curious about people, about other subjects. And I think that was part of my experience taking courses in multiple disciplines and domains. And so I don't think there's anything unique about me or my mind. I think it was what I was exposed to as an undergraduate student. I know that it will add value to our students.
Let's talk athletics. I have a lot of athletes in my classes. Your predecessor was on the record as not being a fan of sports, even though he said he was a soccer player, and took us from Division I to Division III. What message do you have for our student athletes and for those who are interested in coming to UHart to compete in Division III?
Well, I love our student athletes, and I love collegiate athletics. I wrote my doctoral dissertation on the tension between academic mission and athletic aspiration at Patriot League institutions. And I chose the Patriot League as a Division I conference that had a very specific focus on the quality of the student-athlete experience and the primacy of the academic experience among student-athletes. At Babson College, I oversaw a very competitive and national championship level varsity athletics program. I sat on the NCAA Division III Management Council, which is part of the governance structure of the NCAA, and my final year I sat on the NCAA governors representing Division III. Now, I had to step off because I got this little job at the University of Hartford. I have enormous respect for student athletes at the Division III level who play for the love of their sport, the love of their team, their love of their institution. And they have a very keen balance between their academics, their professional development, and their athletic development. And I think the Division III model in particular creates that right balance. And it's not just for the student athlete, but it's also the balance of financial resources at the university or the college level. Yeah. So that we don't look at a dollar spent here as a dollar not spent in a laboratory or a classroom, right? That we're not comparing balls or bats or fields with microscopes or pencils or whiteboards, etc. Right? Maybe not the best analogy. Computers. So enormous respect for our student athletes, the way in which they represent our university. They are ambassadors. They are gifted on the field. And I was at the baseball game in women's lacrosse the other night, and just sort of sat there with a really satisfied grin on my face, just quietly watching them do their thing.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Awesome. I'm going to ask if there are students who are in our audience or faculty who might want to ask a question, but first let me turn it over to Taylor while I go see if I can find someone. Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Thanks.
So continuing with our athletics, I remember when I was little, I would come to the University of Hartford and watch a basketball game, and the stands were completely full.
Yeah.
And now it's the unfortunate thing that the stands aren't as full, and we don't have as many students or locals coming and watching these sports and all of our athletes. Now, do you think there's a way that we would be able to get more people to come and watch our games so that we would have more support for our teams?
There's always a way. So I too grew up watching University of Hartford basketball games, both here on campus and when the team used to play at the Civic Center, or now the XL Center, when Coach Phelan was here. So I do think there is a way, but just because we have it doesn't mean that people will come. You have to outreach. We have to outreach to our students and invite them. We've got to make it an exciting or at least an interesting way to spend a couple of hours, right? It's really fun and really good competition. But there are things that we can do in reaching out to student groups, right? We could have STN night at a basketball game or at a baseball game. Our baseball team is going to play at the Yard Goat Stadium. That's a really cool opportunity to go and support our team, at a professional baseball stadium. There are any number of local schools and youth groups, right, who would love to be on campus. Having them play a 10-minute match, right? Having, a group of 10 and 12-year-olds play a 10-minute match at halftime during a basketball game. So. But it takes proactive outreach from the university to reach out to surrounding communities and invite them to come to campus. We've got a wonderful new track, right? The Grant Family Track. I was visiting with our Magnet High School, University High School for Science and Engineering. They have a track and field program and no track, right? And they are a stone's throw. So that's an opportunity to invite them to use our facilities and be a part of varsity athletic experience. We also have an opportunity to rent our athletic spaces and fields, and that's another opportunity to bring the community in. to play here as a high school. We hosted a high school competition, high school basketball competition. We had local high schools with they hosted the championship here on our campus. So there are definitely ways, but it takes proactive outreach to do it.
One of the advantages of not being in our podcast studio is I have students here in the GSU. This is Jaden, who actually does happen to be one of my students. He's a podcasting student. What year are you, Jaden?
I'm a sophomore.
So why don't you introduce yourself to President Ward and ask your question?
Yeah, hi. So my name is Jaden. I'm a digital media and journalism major. I come closer. I'm a digital media and journalism major. I'm a sophomore here. My question is pretty much about like financial aid. Just talking about how, obviously the school is not cheap. It's it's expensive. Obviously, there's students that have to pay like a lot to be here. So can you just kind of talk a little bit about that? I know that there's people that have had bills that they had to pay. I have friends that, they were almost hindered from coming back on campus because of the bills. So if you just have a question or if you could say a statement about that.
Yeah. Well, it's an investment. A college education is an investment, and we have to help our students and families like yourself be able to navigate and afford that investment. And just as I was talking about expanding student engagement through fundraising and philanthropy, there is no better investment than in scholarship and financial aid. And we have a huge opportunity to be able to increase the available funds and to ensure that our students, regardless of their background, have a chance to be here financially, not just academically. So it's greater fundraising, it's unlocking more of our endowment to support scholarship and financial aid. And frankly, it's also working with local administrators. So where's home for you?
Mount Vernon, New York.
Mount Vernon. So whether you're from outside of Connecticut or in Connecticut, we have the Roberta Willis Scholarship Fund, which is public funds for the state of Connecticut for Connecticut residents to attend a private university. So those are opportunities where we are lobbying for greater financial aid for our students. But we cannot be successful if you are not here. We can't be successful in educating you. And if you're not here because of finances, then we have a responsibility to do everything we can to provide that financial assistance to allow you to be here. Yeah, thank you.
I have another student who has a question. I'm going to bring her up. Why don't you come over here right in front of President Ward? Please introduce yourself. This is not a plant.
Hi, I'm Marley. I'm a first-year acting student at the Hart School.
What's your first name?
Marley.
Marley.
Yes.
Hi, Marley.
I have my question written down a little bit.
Okay.
So I was wondering, so the head of our theater program, Kevin Ramsey, has emphasized to us about advocating for more space in our program with buildings and classrooms, and they were like, is an empty building behind, because we are off campus. So I was wondering what steps you're taking to perhaps build us more studios or classrooms, or maybe having us attend, like get more funds for our program, because we're a bigger program and we don't have as much room for dance classes and things. So I was wondering what steps you're taking for that.
Yeah, so Kevin and I have had a number of conversations about that, and thank you for the question. So space is always a consideration, and so again, it comes back to finding creative ways to be able to do that. I want to look at some community partnerships.
Yes.
Right, where there is space available that we can work in partnership. With some community-based arts groups and maybe share space, right? Yeah. So it's really expensive for us to build. Yeah. It's more efficient for us to partner. So we're going to take a partner-first approach and try to find creative space. I was at the Bushnell last night, met with leaders at the Bushnell and also the Hartford Symphony Orchestra and toured their spaces as well. And so they have an interest in greater engagement with the University of Hartford in creating opportunities for performance spaces. So I don't want to get ahead of myself and saying, hey, we're going to be at the Bushnell. But my point is partnering with local organizations to be able to share resources and talent. especially yours.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
for your
Thank you for the
question.
question.
Taylor, do you have another question, or should I go?
Sure, I can go off of that. Now, some students aren't sure where to get their campus news from.
Yeah.
And especially moments like that where you are trying to get more space for the Hart School, but students in the Hart School may not know about it.
Yeah.
What's one way that you think students can go to, or someone they can go to outside of interviews like this, to find out more information about our campus?
But a good question. I mean, we have our U notes, right, which is right now probably the best single source of information, but it requires opening an email and looking at it. One of the things I've asked our marketing communications folks to consider is there a way for us to be able to push out, maybe through text message, U notes, right? Or a summary of it. Maybe it's a weekly summary that shows up on your, on your phone if you want it. You could obviously either opt in or opt out of that. So we have to find a way to be able to push out information for folks. Social media, obviously, I mean, one thing that people are looking at pretty regularly is social media, and so finding the right feeds and the right accounts to follow, I think, is an opportunity for us to share information. One of the things that I'm learning to be more adept at is following various different accounts. It's how I get information. Now, of course, I'm president, so people reach out to me quite a bit. But I do think that if we can take U-Notes to the next level and be able to push out information, I think that's probably the best source of information right now.
We have just 2 minutes left, and I wanted to ask, do you have a question for any of us? Is there a question or a challenge you want to present to students through Taylor, or to part-time and adjunct faculty through me?
That's a really good question. I guess I will say this. A lot of times people identify issues or concerns, and I guess my challenge would be to first assume no ill intent. And so, the administration doesn't care or isn't listening, is assuming an ill intent. So I think my challenge would be, when there are issues or concerns, to reach out and come with a proposal. I met with the Commuting Student Association, and they were really interested in issues of parking and overnight parking, etc. And I said, why don't you write me a proposal, right? And don't make it a 4 or 5 page, right? But do a summary, take 1 or 2 pages, and make a proposal. We had a student who reached out about concerns about shuttle and crowding on the shuttle. And I forwarded that email to our AVP for operations, and came up with a solution, within a day to address that shuttle issue. So the challenge would be to resist the temptation to think that the quote unquote administration isn't interested in partnering to solve that issue. Now, there are certain times where, given the number of opportunities and challenges that we have and constrained resources, we can't have an immediate fix. But it doesn't mean that we can't put it on the radar screen. So my challenge is, if you've got an idea, if you have a concern, if you have a question, pair that with a potential solution or proposal, and put it up for consideration.
And that's where we're going to have to end. President Ward, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you
Taylor,
for the
thank you for being part of it.
Taylor, it's
And I
a
hope you'll
pleasure.
do this again. Thank
I
you.
look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
This has been a production of the University of Hartford School of Communication.